They say the invisible see everything. For 3 years, I was just part of the furniture in the O'Malley estate. The girl who dusted the bookshelves, the hands that poured the scotch, the silence in the corner of the room. Killian O'Malley, the devil of Dublin, didn't even know my eye colour. But that morning, as I reached up to fix the Windsor knot at his throat, I saw what the cameras missed. I saw the reflection in the foyer mirror. I saw the betrayal, and for the first time, I broke the silence. 6 words. That's all it took to burn the world down. Your driver has a gun. Don't get in the car. The morning air in the O'Malley estate always smelled the same. Espresso, old leather, and the metallic tang of impending violence. Nora Keating stood by the heavy mahogany doors of the master suite, her hands clasped in front of her white apron. She was 24, invisible, and remarkably good at being ignored. For 3 years, she had navigated the shark tank of the East Coast's most feared criminal syndicate without making a ripple. She knew which floorboards creaked, which guards drank on the job, and she knew that Cillian O'Malley took his coffee black with exactly 2 cubes of ice. Cillian stormed out of his dressing room. He was a man composed of sharp angles and tailored wool. At 32, he ran the O'Malley empire with a cruelty that had become legendary from Boston to Baltimore. He was handsome, in the way a storm front is beautiful, dark, imposing, and capable of ruining you without a second thought. He was on his phone, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. I don't care what Salvatore says. If the shipment isn't at the docks by noon, I'm sending his nephew back to him in pieces. Small pieces. He hung up, tossing the phone onto the side table with a clatter that made Nora flinch internally, though her face remained a mask of servitude. He stopped in front of the hallway mirror, frustration radiating off him in waves. He tugged at his tie, a strip of midnight blue silk that refused to sit right. "Damn it," he hissed, his fingers fumbling. His hands, usually steady enough to pull a trigger from 50 yards, were shaking with adrenaline. Nora stepped forward. It was a breach of protocol. She was supposed to be a ghost. But the tension in the room was suffocating, and instinct took over. "Allow me, sir," she said softly. Killian froze. He looked down, seemingly surprised to find a human being standing there, and not a coat rack. His eyes were the color of shattered ice. For a second, Nora thought he might strike her. "Do it," he clipped, dropping his hands. Nora stepped into his personal space. The scent of him hit her. Sandalwood, expensive tobacco, and something cold and sharp. Her fingers went to work on the silk, deft and quick. She kept her eyes lowered, focusing on the fabric. But her peripheral vision was wide open. That was when she saw it. Through the open door of the suite, down the long corridor, the front entrance was visible. The heavy oak doors were open, waiting for the boss to descend. The black armored SUV was idling in the driveway. Kieran, Killian's head of transport, and a man who had been with the family for a decade, was standing by the rear door. He was checking his reflection in the car window. It was a small movement, a subtle adjust of his jacket, but Nora had grown up in a house where reading body language was a survival skill. Kieran reached into his waistband, not to the standard issue holster under his left arm, but to the small of his back. He pulled out a suppressed pistol, checked the chamber, and slid it back. Then he looked up, not at the house, but at the roof. He signaled, a quick tap to his ear, the sniper check. Nora's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. If Killian walked out that door, he was dead. If she spoke, she might be dead. She tightened the knot, sliding it up to his collar. She dared to look up, meeting Killian's gaze. His eyes were narrowed, analyzing her sudden proximity. "It's crooked," she whispered, leaning in as if to smooth the collar. Her lips were inches from his ear. "What?" Killian asked, his voice impatient. "Your driver," she breathed, her voice barely audible over the hum of the air conditioning. "Kieran. He just checked a secondary weapon at the small of his back, and he signaled the roof." Killian didn't flinch. He didn't look towards the door. He didn't gasp. He went perfectly, terrifyingly still. The only sign that he had heard her was the slight tightening of his jaw. "You're the maid," he said, his voice flat. "Nora." He knew her name. "Yes, sir." "If you're lying to me, Nora, I will kill you myself before breakfast." "He signaled the roof, sir," she repeated, her hands pulling away from his tie, smoothing it down one last time. "Don't get in the car." Killian stepped back. He adjusted his cufflinks, his expression bored, detached. He walked to the doorway of his suite and shouted down the hall, "Kieran!" The driver looked up, startled. "Boss?" "Bring the car around to the side entrance. I need to pick up the files from the study." "Boss, we're running late for the sit-down with the Russians," Kieran called back, a bead of sweat visible on his forehead even from this distance. "The route is set." "I said, bring it around," Killian commanded. The authority in his voice was absolute. Kieran hesitated. That split-second hesitation confirmed everything. "On it, boss." Kieran got into the driver's seat. Killian grabbed Nora's arm. His grip was like iron. He pulled her behind the heavy structural pillar of the master bedroom, shielding her body with his. "Watch," he commanded. Below, the SUV engine revved. As soon as Kieran shifted the gear into reverse to move toward the side, the vehicle barely moved an inch before a fireball erupted. Boom! The explosion shook the foundation of the house. The windows of the master suite shattered inward, raining glass onto the carpet. The sound was deafening, a physical blow to the chest. Nora gasped, covering her head, but Killian didn't move. He stood amidst the falling glass, staring down at the burning wreckage of his armored car. If he had stepped inside, he would be ash. He turned to Nora. The look in his eyes had changed. It wasn't gratitude. It was a dark, predatory curiosity. "Protocol Alpha!" Killian roared into his wrist communicator. "House is compromised! Lockdown!" He looked at Nora, glass shimmering in her hair. "Who are you?" he demanded, pulling a gun from his own waistband. "Because no maid spots an ambush like that." The chaos was immediate. Alarms blared, a high-pitched, rhythmic shrieking that made thinking difficult. "Move!" Killian ordered. He didn't wait for her to comply. He grabbed her wrist again, dragging her towards the back of the suite. "Sir, Shut up!" He pushed a heavy bookshelf aside, revealing a keypad. He punched in a code, and a section of the wall hissed open. A panic room. Or rather, a panic tunnel. He shoved her inside and followed, the wall sealing shut behind them, muffling the roar of the fire and the shouting guards. The tunnel was dimly lit by LED strips along the floor. It smelled of damp earth and concrete. "Walk," Killian said, the gun trained on her back. "If you stop, I shoot. I just saved your life," Nora said, her voice trembling, but her chin high. "Or you're part of the play," Killian countered, his voice echoing in the narrow space. "Maybe you're the closer, the one meant to finish the job if the bomb failed. If I wanted you dead, I would have let you get in the damn car." "Keep walking." They emerged 5 minutes later in a detached garage, hidden deep in the woods bordering the estate. A nondescript grey sedan sat waiting. Killian threw her into the passenger seat and zip-tied her hands to the door handle before she could blink. He drove like a madman, tearing through the back roads of the Hamptons, putting miles between them and the smoke rising from his estate. He didn't speak for an hour. He drove with one hand on the wheel, the other holding his phone as he barked orders in a mix of English and Gaelic. "Burn the staff records." "No. Trust no one." "Declan, meet me at the safe house in Montauk. Bring the kit. We have a guest." Nora stared out the window. Her life as a ghost was over. They arrived at a brutalist concrete structure overlooking the ocean. It looked less like a house and more like a fortress. Killian dragged her inside, cutting the zip tie only to shove her into a steel chair in the middle of a stark living room. He paced in front of her, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up. The perfectly tied tie, the one she had fixed, was now loose, hanging around his neck like a noose. "Start talking," Killian said. He placed his gun on the table just out of her reach, a test. Full name: Nora Keating. That's the name on your employment file. Checked out by my security team. Clean background, no debt, no family. Just a girl from Queens who needed a job. Killian leaned in, his hand slamming onto the arms of her chair. But normal girls don't know what a check sign looks like. Normal girls don't know that Kieran carries a secondary piece. I observe, Nora said, pressing her back into the chair. It's my job. Your job is to clean toilets and fold sheets. Your job is not to analyze tactical signaling. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a switchblade. He flicked it open. Nora didn't flinch. Killian paused. You didn't blink. My father, Nora said quietly. He was a gambler. Bad one. When I was a kid, men used to come to the house. I learned to watch their hands. If they touched their belt, I hid under the sink. If they touched their nose, they were bluffing. If they looked at the door, they were leaving. Killian studied her face. That's a touching story. But Kieran wasn't a gambler. He was a professional hitman on my payroll. He was sweating, Nora said. He never sweats. And the bulge in his jacket, the fabric pulled to the left. His standard issue is a Glock 19, worn on the right. The pull was wrong. It was heavy. A jammer or a detonator? Killian straightened up, the knife lowering slightly. He looked impressed despite himself. You noticed the fabric displacement. Silk-wool blend, Nora murmured. It drapes heavily. It shouldn't bunch unless there's something blocky underneath. Killian laughed, a dry, humorless sound. A fashion critique saved my life. The door to the safe house burst open. Nora jumped, but Killian remained calm. A massive man walked in. Declan, Killian's second in command. He looked like he was carved out of granite. Boss, Declan grunted. Estate is secure. 3 dead. Kieran is unrecognizable. But we found his phone. And? 1 outgoing text sent 2 minutes before the blast. Declan looked at Nora, then back to Killian. It went to a burner number, but the trace is interesting. It pinged off a tower in Little Italy. Killian's face darkened. The Russos. Or someone trying to look like the Russos, Declan added. Boss, we have a problem. The security logs for the past week were wiped, from the inside. Killian turned his gaze back to Nora. Who had access to the server room? Only you, me, and the head of security, Declan said. And the cleaning staff, Killian whispered. He looked at Nora. You clean the server room on Tuesdays. Nora's blood ran cold. I just dust the vents. I don't touch the computers. Declan, Killian said, his voice void of emotion. Give me the pliers. No, Nora shouted, struggling against the chair. I didn't touch your servers. Check the keycard logs. I go in, I stay for 10 minutes. I leave. I'm not a hacker. Killian took the pliers from Declan. He walked toward her slowly. You're right, Killian said softly. You're not a hacker. You're too observant to be just a hacker. You're a spy. I'm not. Then prove it, Killian snapped. Tell me something about Declan right now that a maid shouldn't know. Prove your powers of observation are real, and not just intel fed to you by my enemies. Nora looked at Declan. She scanned him frantically. The giant man stood stoically, arms crossed. His left boot, Nora gasped. The sole is worn down more than the right. He had a limp recently, an injury he's hiding. And he smells like peppermint and gun oil. But under that, cheap vanilla perfume. Declan stiffened. He's seeing someone, Nora rushed on. Someone he shouldn't be, because he checks his watch every time you mention the South Sector. That's where she lives. The vanilla. It's sweet nothings, a drugstore brand. He's dating a civilian, or a pro. The room went silent. Killian looked at Declan. Declan's face turned a shade of crimson. Boss, it's not. Is she right? Killian asked, his voice lethal. Declan looked down. It's the waitress at the diner on 4th. It's nothing, Killian. Killian dropped the pliers. He looked at Nora with a newfound respect, and something else. Wariness. You're dangerous, Nora Keating, Killian said, And right now, you're the only person in this room I haven't caught lying to me yet. The sun had set, casting the safe house in long, bruised shadows. The atmosphere was brittle. Killian sat by the window, watching the dark road. Declan had been sent away to fix his loose end with the waitress, leaving Killian and Nora alone. Nora was no longer tied up, but she knew she was still a prisoner. She sat on the sofa, nursing a glass of water, watching Killian. He had shed the suit jacket. The white shirt was unbuttoned at the top, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and covered in faint scars. "Why are you still here?" Killian asked without turning around. "Because you have men with guns at the gate," Nora replied dryly. "I mean, why at the estate? With your skill set, you could have been working for the FBI, or a rival family. Why scrub floors?" Nora looked into a glass. "Invisibility is a shield, Mr. O'Malley. When you're a maid, no one looks at you. They look through you. I needed to disappear." "From who?" Nora hesitated. "My ex-husband. He's a bad man." "I'm a bad man, Nora. And you're sitting in my living room." "He's different. He's a cop, a dirty one." Killian turned to face her. "Name? Detective Arthur Lowe, NYPD Vice." Killian's eyes widened slightly. "Lowe? The man who seized my shipment in the Bronx last year?" "He has a temper," Nora said, her voice dropping. "I left him 3 years ago. I changed my name. I took the job at your estate because it was the one place the police couldn't get into without a warrant. You were my protection." Killian laughed, shaking his head. "You used the leader of the Irish Mafia as a domestic abuse shelter. That is bold. It worked. Until this morning." Killian walked over to the minibar and poured himself a whiskey. He poured a second one and handed it to her. "Drink. You'll need it." "Why?" "Because if the Russos tried to kill me, it means they think I'm weak. They think I'm distracted. They're coming for everything. And since you saved me, they'll assume you're an asset. They'll come for you too." As if on cue, the lights in the safe house flickered and died. Total darkness swallowed the room. "Get down!" Killian roared. Glass shattered as a barrage of automatic gunfire raked the front of the house. Killian tackled Nora off the sofa, covering her body with his as bullets chewed up the drywall where she had been sitting seconds ago. "They found us!" Killian cursed, crawling toward his duffel bag. "Declan must have been followed. Or he sold you out," Nora whispered, adrenaline spiking her voice. "Grab the bag," Killian ordered, ignoring her comment. "Kitchen, back exit, now!" They scrambled on hands and knees. The noise was deafening. Suppressed fire thwip, 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 tearing through the expensive furniture. They reached the kitchen. Killian kicked the back door open but stopped. A red laser dot appeared on his chest. He slammed the door shut just as a bullet punched a hole through the wood. "Sniper cover!" he yelled. "We're pinned!" "The basement," Nora said. "There's a coal chute. I saw it on the blueprints when I cleaned the library. You cleaned the library of my main house. This is a safe house." "Rich people build houses the same way," Nora yelled back. "The architect was the same. I saw the signature on the cornerstone. There's a coal chute in the east corner." Killian looked at her, bewildered. "You are the most terrifying maid in existence. Less talking, more running." They ran to the pantry door. Killian fired 3 shots blindly into the living room to provide cover fire, then followed Nora down the narrow wooden stairs into the pitch-black basement. Nora didn't need light. She felt her way along the wall, counting steps. "Here." She found the latch. It was rusted. "Help me!" Killian holstered his weapon and grabbed the wheel of the chute door. With a grunt of exertion, he wrenched it open. Moonlight spilled in. "Go," he said, boosting her up. Nora scrambled through the narrow opening, spilling out onto the wet grass of the backyard. She reached down, grabbing Killian's hand. He was heavy, but adrenaline gave her strength. She pulled him up. They were in the woods behind the house. Behind them, flashlights were sweeping the rooms they had just fled. "My car is gone," Killian said, looking at the driveway where the sedan was now riddled with holes. "We walk," Nora said. "The highway is 2 miles west." "You know the geography of Montauk, too?" "I read maps when I'm bored." They began to run through the underbrush. Killian was breathing hard, not from exhaustion, but from fury. "When I find out who gave up this location—" "It wasn't Declan," Nora said, ducking under a branch. "Stop defending him." "I'm not. But the shooter, the timing, they cut the power first. That's military, private contractors. Declan is a thug. This is precise. This is an orchestrated coup," Killian finished. He stopped, grabbing her arm to steady her as they slid down a muddy embankment. For a moment, they were pressed together against a tree, hiding from a sweeping spotlight of a helicopter overhead. "A helicopter?" Nora whispered. "Since when do rival families have air support?" "They don't," Killian said, his face grim. "That's not the Russos." He looked at Nora. "That's a police chopper, but it's running dark. No lights except the search spot." Nora's eyes went wide. "Arthur." "Your ex-husband isn't just a dirty cop, Nora," Killian said, realizing the full scope of the nightmare. "He's working with whoever wants to take my territory. They used you to get to me." "No, he doesn't know I'm here." "He knows," Killian said, pulling her closer as the light swept over the tree. "And now we're the 2 most wanted people in New York. We can't go to my men. We can't go to the cops." He looked down at her. The maid and the mob boss, covered in mud, shivering in the woods. "You wanted to disappear, Nora?" Killian whispered, his lips brushing her forehead. "Congratulations. You're a ghost again. But this time, you're haunting the world with me." Rain began to fall, cold and relentless, washing the mud from their clothes but soaking the chill into their bones. They had walked for 3 miles in silence, avoiding the main roads, sticking to the shadows of the power lines. Killian was lagging. The adrenaline was fading, and the reality of a graze wound on his ribs was setting in. He was losing blood. Not enough to kill him, but enough to slow a man down. "We need a car," Nora said, scanning the back lot of a run-down diner off Route 27. "I can hotwire that Ford," Killian grunted, nodding toward a rusted pickup truck. "No," Nora stopped him. "New cars have transponders. Old cars have loud engines. We need something invisible." She pointed to a grey 2010 Honda Civic with a "for sale" sign in the window, parked near the dumpster. "That one. It's unlocked. I saw the owner leave the keys on the tire. It's a localized drop-off for a sale." Killian looked at her, water dripping from his dark hair. "You saw the keys on the tire from 50 yards away in the rain?" "I saw the man bend down. He didn't tie his shoe." Killian didn't argue. He was learning that arguing with Nora Keating was a waste of time. They took the car. Nora drove. Killian slumped in the passenger seat, his hand pressed against his side, his face pale in the passing streetlights. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice rough. "The Starlight Motel in Queens," Nora said, her eyes fixed on the road. "Cash only. No cameras. The owner owes my father a gambling debt from 1998. He won't ask questions." They arrived an hour later. The neon sign buzzed with a dying E, casting a sickly pink glow over the wet pavement. Nora secured a room 104 at the back, facing the alley. Inside, the room smelled of stale cigarettes and lemon pledge. Nora locked the door, chained it, and wedged a chair under the handle. Then she turned to Killian. "Shirt off," she commanded. Killian sat on the edge of the sagging mattress. He looked at her, his eyes heavy-lidded, but intense. "Buying me dinner first?" "You're bleeding on the bedspread, and I don't have the deposit." He hissed in pain as he peeled the sodden dress shirt away from his skin. The bullet had carved a nasty furrow along his lower ribs. It was ugly, but shallow. Nora went to the bathroom and came back with a bottle of cheap vodka from the minibar and a sewing kit she'd had in her pocket, standard issue for a maid who often had to fix a hem on the fly. "This is going to hurt," she said, uncapping the vodka. "I've had worse," Killian muttered. He watched her hands. They were steady. "You're enjoying this. Cleaning up your messes. It's what you pay me for." She poured the alcohol over the wound. Killian's body seized, every muscle pulling tight, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the sheets. He didn't make a sound, just a sharp intake of breath through his nose. Nora threaded the needle. She moved in close, kneeling between his legs to get a better angle. The proximity was sudden and overwhelming. She could feel the heat radiating off him. "You said your husband, Arthur, is working with my enemies," Killian said, his voice low, trying to distract himself from the needle piercing his skin. "Why?" "Because he's greedy," Nora said, stitching carefully, "and because he hates that I got away. Taking down the man who protected me. You is his way of proving he still owns me." "He doesn't own you," Killian growled. The ferocity in his voice made Nora pause. "He thinks he does. If I survive this," Killian said, looking down at the top of her head, "I'm going to find Arthur Lowe, and I'm going to take him apart. Slowly." "Focus on surviving first," she whispered, tying off the suture. She bit the thread to cut it. She pulled back, but Killian caught her hand. His grip was gentle this time, his thumb tracing the calluses on her palm. "Well, why didn't you run?" he asked. "In the woods. You could have left me. You could have gone to the cops and claimed I kidnapped you. I told you I don't run anymore." Nora met his gaze. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with the electricity of two people who had just cheated death. "And besides, you're the only person who ever looked at me and saw something worth saving." Killian leaned in. The distance between them vanished. He smelled of rain, vodka, and copper blood. His hand moved to the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her damp hair. "Nora," he breathed, his voice a low rumble against her lips. He kissed her. It wasn't the kiss of a gentleman. It was the kiss of a man who was used to taking what he wanted, desperate and consuming. Nora froze for a split second, then melted into it, her hands clutching his bare shoulders. It was a collision of fear and desire, a release of 3 years of silence. He pulled her onto the bed, careful of his side, his body covering hers. For a moment, the war outside didn't exist. There was only the heat of the motel room and the man who was supposed to be her boss, now unraveling in her arms. But before it could go further, Killian pulled back, breathing hard, his forehead resting against hers. "We can't," he whispered, regret thick in his voice. "Not here. Not while they're hunting us. I won't be distracted. I need you sharp." Nora nodded, breathless, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. "You're right." Killian rolled off her, staring at the ceiling. "Get some sleep, Nora. Tomorrow we stop running. Tomorrow we go on the offense." Morning brought a grey, unforgiving light and a plan that bordered on suicidal. Killian was up before dawn, pacing the small room. The wound was stiff, but he was moving with his usual predatory grace. He had acquired a burner phone, likely stolen from a housekeeping cart, and was already making calls. "Silas," Killian said into the phone, "don't speak. Listen, I'm alive. The accounts are frozen. I need the ledger." A pause. Killian's eyes narrowed. "I don't care if the feds are watching the bank. I'm not going to the bank. I'm going to the charity gala at the Pierre Hotel tonight. I know the Russos will be there. I know Arthur will be working security detail. Bring the key to the suite, room 412. He hung up and crushed the phone under his boot. Nora sat up, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "The Pierre? Killian. That's the most public venue in the city. Every crime family in the tri-state area uses that gala as neutral ground." "Exactly," Killian turned to her, a wicked grin spreading across his face. It was the smile of the devil of Dublin. "They think I'm dead, Nora, or running. They won't expect me to walk through the front door in a tuxedo." "And what am I supposed to do?" Killian looked her up and down. You're going to be the distraction. Underscore, 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 Underscore. 3 hours later, Nora stood in front of a mirror in a high-end boutique in Soho. Killian had convinced the owner to open early with a wad of cash he'd had stashed in his boot. The dress was emerald green silk, backless, with a slit that went up to her thigh. It fit her like a second skin. It was a weapon. Killian stepped out of the fitting room in a black tuxedo, tailored to hide the bandage around his ribs. He stood behind her, watching their reflection. "You don't look like a maid, Nora," he murmured, placing a diamond necklace around her throat. "Stolen or bought," she didn't ask. "You look like a queen." "I feel like bait," she replied, adjusting the hidden earpiece in her hair. "You are," Killian admitted, "but you're bait with teeth. Here." He handed her a small, pearl-handled derringer. "Thigh holster, 2 shots, close range. Don't use it unless you have to. Underscore, 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 underscore. The Pierre Hotel ballroom was a sea of diamonds, champagne, and treachery. A string quartet played Mozart, while men who ordered murders for a living discussed stock portfolios. Killian and Nora entered arm in arm. The room didn't go silent, but the ripple of recognition was immediate. Whispers spread like wildfire. "O'Malley is alive. Who is the girl?" Nora felt hundreds of eyes on her. She kept her chin high, channeling every ounce of icy detachment she had learned from watching Killian for 3 years. "Stay close," Killian murmured, smiling for the cameras. "Arthur is here. I saw him at the perimeter." "I see him," Nora said, her voice tight. Arthur Lowe was standing near the kitchen entrance, dressed in a security suit, scanning the crowd. He looked older, harder. When his eyes landed on Nora, he stopped. His face went slack, then twisted into a mask of pure rage. "He's moving," Nora whispered. "Let him," Killian said. "We need to find Vinnie Moretti, the Russo boss." They navigated the crowd, Killian shaking hands with terrified associates who thought he was a ghost. Finally, they found him. Vinnie the Butcher Moretti was holding court near the ice sculpture, laughing with a senator. "Vinnie," Killian said smoothly. Moretti choked on his drink. He turned, his face draining of color. "Killian, we heard there was an accident." "A minor setback," Killian said, picking a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. "I hear you're looking to expand into the docks, Vinnie. I'd advise against it." "This is neutral ground, O'Malley," Vinnie hissed, looking around for his guards. "I know. That's why I'm here to talk. My driver is dead. My house is in ruins." "Someone gave the order, Vinnie. Was it you?" "I don't use bombs," Vinnie spat. "I use knives. You know that. This smells like the Russians. Or an inside job." Suddenly, Killian's earpiece crackled. It was Silas, his lawyer. "Boss, I'm in the suite. I have the files. But you need to get up here. Now. There's something in the ledger you need to see. It's not the Russos. It's family." Killian froze. "Family? Just get up here." "Nora," Killian said, grabbing her elbow. "Plan B. We're going upstairs." "Killian, Arthur is cutting through the crowd. He's got 3 men with him. Go to the elevator. I'll intercept." "No," Nora said firmly. "We stick together." She grabbed a heavy silver tray from a passing waiter's hands and, without breaking stride, hurled it into the path of Arthur's men. The crash of glasses created chaos. Screams erupted. "Run!" Nora yelled. They bolted for the service elevators. Killian slammed the button. The doors began to slide shut, just as Arthur burst through the crowd, gun drawn. Neutral ground be damned. "Nora!" Arthur screamed, his face red with exertion. "You think you can leave me for him? He's a monster!" "He's a better man than you'll ever be," Nora shouted back as the doors sealed. The elevator shot upward. Killian looked at her, breathless, a wild grin on his face. "You threw a tray of champagne at a federal agent." "It was cheap champagne," she panted. The elevator dinged at the 4th floor. They drew their weapons. Killian his silenced Glock, Nora her small pistol. They moved down the hallway to room 412. The door was ajar. Killian signalled Nora to stay back. He kicked the door open and swept the room. Clear! But it wasn't clear. Silas the lawyer was sitting in the armchair facing the door. He was dead. A single clean shot to the forehead. On the desk next to him sat a laptop, open, and on the screen was a live video feed. It was a feed of Killian's own security room, back at the estate. A voice came from the laptop speakers. Digital, distorted. "Hello, brother." Killian lowered his gun, his face turning ashen. "That's impossible." "Who is it?" Nora asked, stepping forward, looking at the screen. "My brother," Killian whispered. "Liam. He died 5 years ago. I buried him." "You buried an empty coffin, Killian," the voice on the laptop sneered. "And now I'm coming to take back the kingdom you stole from me. The bomb was just a knock on the door." The feed cut to black. Sirens wailed from the street below. They were trapped in a hotel room with a dead body, framed for murder, while a ghost from the past was orchestrating their destruction. Killian looked at Nora. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something Nora had never seen in him before, fear. "We have to go," Nora said, grabbing his hand. "Now." "Where?" Killian asked, staring at his dead lawyer. "There is nowhere left." "Yes, there is," Nora said, pulling him towards the window that led to the fire escape. "We go to the one place a dead man won't look." "And where is that?" Nora kicked the window latch open, the wind from the city howling in. "We're going to my mother's house in the Bronx." The Bronx at 2 a.m. was a symphony of distant sirens and barking dogs. It was a world away from the manicured silence of the Hamptons or the polished veneer of the Pierre Hotel. Nora led Killian through the back alley of a row of brick, semi-detached houses. They were soaked, shivering, and covered in soot from the fire escape descent. Nora stopped at a green door with peeling paint. She didn't knock. She reached under a flower pot, found a key, and turned the lock. "Shoes off," she whispered as they stepped into the warm, dimly lit kitchen. "If you wake her up, you deal with her." Killian O'Malley, the man who made grown men weep for mercy, looked around the cramped kitchen with genuine trepidation. "Who?" "My mother." They didn't make it past the refrigerator before the overhead light snapped on. Sitting at the small circular table, a cigarette burning in an ashtray, was a woman in a floral housecoat. She had Nora's eyes and a face carved from granite. A shotgun rested casually across her lap. "You're late, Nora," the woman said, her voice like gravel. She shifted her gaze to Killian. "And you brought a stray in a tuxedo." "Mum, put the gun down," Nora said, collapsing into a chair. "This is Killian, my boss. The one the news says blew up his own house." Maura Keating took a drag of her cigarette. He looked smaller in person. "Mrs. Keating," Killian began, stepping forward with his hands raised, "I assure you—" "Sit down," Maura commanded, kicking a chair out. "You look like hell. I'll make tea. If the cops come, you're in the attic. If the Italians come, you're in the basement." For the next hour, the most feared crime lord in New York sat at a formica table in the Bronx, drinking Barry's tea and eating soda bread, while Nora's mother cleaned and redressed his wound. "It's a clean shot," Maura muttered, taping gauze over his ribs. "You're lucky. Arthur used to shoot worse than this when he was drunk." Killian froze. "You knew Arthur?" "I hated him," Maura said, her eyes flashing. "But Nora, she thought she could fix him, just like she thinks she can fix you." Nora slammed her mug down. "I am not fixing him, Mum. I am saving his life. There's a difference." "Is there?" Maura looked at Killian. "My daughter has a habit of finding broken things and bleeding herself dry to put them back together. Don't you dare let her bleed for you." Killian looked at Nora. She was exhausted, her hair messy, wearing one of her old, oversized hoodies she'd pulled from a closet. She looked vulnerable, yet utterly invincible. "I intend to do the bleeding, Mrs. Keating," Killian said quietly. Mora held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Now, the laptop. You said there was a feed? Killian pulled the stolen laptop from his bag. He opened it on the kitchen table. The video feed from the hotel room was gone, replaced by static. But Killian brought up the cached image of the room where the broadcast had originated. I know this room, Killian said, squinting at the screen. Stone walls, high arches, no windows. It looks like a church, Nora said, leaning over his shoulder. No, Mora interrupted, pointing a calloused finger at the corner of the screen. Look at the floor. That's not stone. That's industrial tiling. And that symbol on the wall, the faint one behind the chair? Killian zoomed in. It was a faded cross, but stylized. St. Jude S., Killian whispered, the blood draining from his face. The old orphanage in Hell's Kitchen. My father bought the building in the 90s to launder money through charitable donations. It's been condemned for 10 years. Why would Liam be there? Nora asked. Because that's where we grew up, Killian said, his voice hollow. Before the O'Malleys adopted us. Before we were princes of the city, we were just unwanted kids in that basement. Liam, he never left. In his head, he's still there. Killian stood up, the pain in his ribs forgotten. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He's not just taking my empire, Nora. He's rewriting our history. He wants to end it where it began. We need weapons, Nora said, standing up with him. We can't walk into a condemned building with a derringer and a prayer. Mora stood up and walked to the pantry. She pushed aside a stack of canned beans and pulled a false panel from the wall. Behind it lay a small arsenal. 2 Glock 17s, a pump-action shotgun, and a box of flashbangs. Killian stared at the older woman. Mrs. Keating, who exactly are you? Mora racked the slide of the shotgun. I was a union rep for the dock workers in the 80s, son. You learn a few things about leverage. She handed the Glocks to Killian and Nora. Go, Mora said. Take my car. It's the beat-up Camry out front. Arthur knows this house. He'll be here soon. I'll hold him off. Mum, no, Nora cried. Go, Mora barked. I've dealt with Arthur Lowe before. I'll be fine. You two have a ghost to bust. Killian looked at Mora with profound respect. I will repay this debt. Repay it by keeping her alive, Mora said. They ran out into the rainy night. As they sped away in the battered Camry, Killian looked at Nora. Your family is intense. Welcome to the Bronx, Nora said, checking the magazine of her gun. Now drive. We have a brother to kill. St. Jude's orphanage loomed against the skyline like a rotting tooth. The windows were boarded up, graffiti scarring the brickwork. Rain lashed against the roof, masking the sound of their approach. Killian parked the car 2 blocks away. They moved through the shadows, scaling the perimeter fence. The courtyard was overgrown, filled with the rusting skeletons of playground equipment. There are sentries, Nora whispered, spotting the glow of a cigarette in the bell tower. 2 on the roof, 1 at the main gate. We go through the coal chute, Killian said. Nora looked at him, a small smile touching her lips. You learned. I had a good teacher. They slipped into the basement, the air thick with mold and decay. Killian moved with a cold, lethal focus. He was no longer the businessman in the suit. He was the predator returning to his territory. They cleared the lower level, taking out 2 guards with silent, efficient takedowns. Nora moved like smoke, her breathing steady. She was terrified, but she channeled the fear into hyper-awareness. They reached the heavy oak doors of the main chapel. Voices drifted from inside. He's not coming, Liam, Arthur's voice echoed. He's running. He's halfway to Mexico by now. He'll come, a second voice replied. It was raspy, broken, yet terrifyingly familiar. Killian has a hero complex. He thinks he's the savior. He saved me once. Remember? Killian kicked the doors open. The chapel was lit by hundreds of candles. In the center, sitting on a makeshift throne made of old pews, sat Liam O'Malley. He looked like a distorted reflection of Killian. The same dark hair, but wild and unkempt. The same sharp jaw, but covered in scars. Half his face was marred by burn tissue, the result of the accident 5 years ago that was supposed to have killed him. Arthur Lowe stood beside him, holding an assault rifle. "Hello, brother," Liam smiled. The skin around his burn tightened grotesquely. "You look good. Being king suits you." "Liam," Killian said, stepping into the aisle. His gun lowered but ready. "End this. Let the girl go. This is between us." "The girl?" Liam laughed. He looked at Nora, who was aiming her gun at Arthur. "Ah, the maid. The one who saw the tie. You have good eyes, darling. Shame you won't be using them much longer." "Arthur," Nora said, her voice steady. "Walk away. He's going to kill you too. You're a loose end." "I'm a partner," Arthur shouted, his eyes manic. "We're splitting the territory. I get the ports, he gets the city. And I get you, Nora. Back where you belong." "She belongs to no one," Killian snarled. "Sentimental," Liam tutted. "You were always soft, Killian. That's why Father favored me. Until I made a mistake. You burned down a tenement building with families inside because they missed a payment," Killian yelled, his composure cracking. "That wasn't a mistake, Liam. It was a massacre. I didn't kill you because I couldn't pull the trigger on my own blood. I sent you away to get help." "You sent me to rot," Liam screamed, standing up. "And now I'm going to burn it all down. Starting with you." Liam pressed a button on a remote in his hand. Click. Nothing happened. Liam frowned. He pressed it again. Click. "Looking for the C4 charges on the pillars?" Nora asked, her voice ringing clear in the chapel. Liam and Arthur froze. "While you were monologuing," Nora said, stepping forward, "I noticed the wiring running along the skirting boards. It was too new for an old building. While Killian distracted you, I cut the receiver line at the door." Killian smirked. "Like I said, she's the best." "Kill them!" Liam shrieked. Arthur raised his rifle, but Killian was faster. He fired 2 shots. Arthur took them in the chest, staggering back, falling over the altar railing. Chaos erupted. Guards poured from the vestry. Killian dove behind a pew, returning fire. Nora rode toward the side aisle, using the stone pillars as cover. "Cover me!" Killian yelled. Nora popped up, firing with terrifying accuracy, suppressing the guards on the balcony. Killian sprinted down the center aisle, vaulting over the debris, heading straight for Liam. Liam pulled a jagged knife from his belt, his favorite weapon. He lunged at Killian. They crashed into the altar, knocking over candles. The dry wood of the old pews caught fire instantly. The chapel began to fill with smoke. It was a brawl, brutal and ugly. Liam fought with the strength of the insane, slashing at Killian's face. Killian blocked, grunting as the blade sliced his forearm. He headbutted Liam, shattering his nose, but Liam just laughed, blood spraying. "We die together, brother!" Liam screamed, tackling Killian into the growing flames. "Nora, get out!" Killian roared, struggling to hold Liam back. "No!" Nora shouted. She saw Arthur's fallen rifle. She scrambled for it, sliding across the floor. She raised the weapon. The smoke was thick. She couldn't get a clean shot without hitting Killian. "Killian, move!" Killian kicked Liam in the chest, creating a foot of separation. Bang! Nora fired a single shot. Liam jerked. He looked down at the hole in his chest. He looked at Nora, then at Killian. A look of genuine surprise crossed his face. "The maid!" he gurgled. He collapsed backward into the fire. Killian scrambled away from the flames, coughing. He looked at the burning body of his brother. There was no time for mourning. The fire was climbing the walls, consuming the old orphanage. He ran to Nora. She dropped the rifle, her hands shaking. "Arthur?" she asked. Killian checked the body behind the altar. Arthur Lowe was dead, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. "It's over," Killian said. He grabbed Nora's hand. "We have to go. The fire department is coming." They stumbled out into the cool night air just as the stained glass windows of the chapel blew out, sending a shower of colored glass onto the wet pavement. They stood by the fence, watching the inferno. The sirens were getting louder. Killian turned to Nora. He wiped a smudge of ash from her cheek. "You saved me," he said. "Again." "I told you," Nora whispered, leaning into his touch. "I don't like crooked ties, and I don't like loose ends." "Oh." Killian pulled her into him, kissing her fiercely against the backdrop of the burning past. There was no hesitation this time, no pulling away. "I have no house," Killian said, resting his forehead against hers. "My money is frozen. My reputation is in tatters. I am a king without a kingdom." Nora looked at him, her eyes shining in the firelight. "Then we build a new one," she said, "together." The skyline of Manhattan glittered like a diamond necklace. In the penthouse of the newly constructed O'Malley Tower, the air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh ink. Nora Keating walked into the office. She wasn't wearing a maid's uniform. She was wearing a tailored white suit that cost more than her mother's house. She placed a file on the massive ebony desk. "The merger with the Asian syndicates is complete," she said, "and the shipping routes are secure. No contraband. Just legitimate trade. Mostly." Killian turned his chair around. He looked tired but content. The darkness that used to haunt his eyes was gone, replaced by a steady, quiet confidence. He stood up and walked over to her. "And the security?" he asked. "Tight as a drum," Nora smiled. "I checked the stuff myself. No hidden weapons, no secret radios, and definitely no crooked ties." Killian reached out, adjusting the collar of her blouse. His fingers lingered on her skin. "You know," he murmured, "I'm thinking of firing my head of operations." "Oh?" Nora raised an eyebrow. "Why is that?" "Because," Killian said, leaning down to kiss her, "I want to make her my wife instead." Nora laughed, a sound that was light and free. "I'll consider the offer, but the benefits package better be good. Lifetime supply of black coffee." "Deal." They stood together at the window, looking out over the city they owned. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were partners, the Devil of Dublin and the Queen of Queens, and somewhere in the Bronx, Maura Keating was sitting on her porch, drinking tea, smiling as she read the newspaper headline, "O'Malley Empire Goes Legit, a New Era." She took a sip and whispered to the air, "About damn time." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why you always pay attention to the details. Nora Keating didn't just adjust a tie, she rearranged the entire underworld. From Invisible Maid to the throne of New York, she proved that the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one with the gun. It's the one who sees the gun before it's drawn. If you enjoyed this twisty ride of betrayal, romance and revenge, smash that like button and subscribe. We release new stories every week. Let me know in the comments. Would you have spotted the driver's gun, or would you have gotten in the car? Until next time, keep your eyes open.